Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Future is Bilingual podcast. My name is Heather, and I'm so happy to be with you guys today, bringing you this episode because I know it's been a long time since I've published an episode. Life has been busy and crazy, but I'm really happy to bring you this episode, this interview with Misty, one of my good friends that I met while studying abroad in France. And she will bring us back to that fateful day when she first arrived in France and realized how different studying French was from living in France. She also hilariously tells us how she met her husband, who is French, and she and I discuss being the non-native parent raising bilingual children and have an honest discussion about how difficult but also how wonderful that can be. And she even teaches me some new words and phrases in French that I hadn't heard before. So make sure you stay tuned all the way to the end to hear those. And I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Future is Bilingual podcast. Today, I'm very excited because I'm sitting with a good friend who I lost contact with for many years. Misty, welcome to the Future is Bilingual.
Thank you so much, Heather.
So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, who's in your family?
Okay. So I'm Misty Prejean. I'm a dual citizen, which I'm very excited about because I was born American and I just became French through naturalization by marriage this year.
Yay! Félicitations.
No. Merci. So yeah, that's like a huge accomplishment for me in my life. And it was definitely a life goal. Mm-hmm. I'm sort of like this small town girl. And my life really, it drastically changed after studying abroad in France. And so, I've had lots of other experiences and travels that influenced my life, but nothing like my experience in France. So a little bit more about who I am. I'm an assistant professor in the Northwest US and coordinator of a university program. My master's was focused on linguistic anthropology. I used to teach anthropology quite often, but I'm about to get my doctorate in political science this fall. So I'll be transitioning to teaching more political science. Mm-hmm. And really excited to be graduated because I'm a mom and working full-time as a mom, doing a doctorate is not sustainable. So really excited to.
Don't tell me that. I'm in my first year.
I'm so sorry, Heather. I'm so sorry.
I don't want to hear this.
I know your work ethic and I know you and you're going to be just fine. I know that for sure.
It's doable, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, let me tell you who's in my family. Mm-hmm. It's, my husband, who's a French national, Geoffroy, and we have a 2.5-year-old daughter, Maeve. And Geoffroy just got his American citizenship last year. And so he's a dual citizen. And Maeve was born with dual nationality. So now we're all three French and American.
Amazing.
Exciting.
Okay. Did he have to wait or did he wait so that she would have dual citizenship? Like if he still kept his French citizenship only, did she automatically get it? Or if he had both and you had both, would she have both? How does that work?
Yeah, I do know. Okay. So, and we had to look into this. We had to really ask a lot of questions. So when Maeve was born, Geoffroy was already a dual citizen. But because he was a French citizen, France will always recognize the, French citizenship. He didn't have to relinquish it to France. Mm-hmm. The US, they only recognize that he's American. So he had to sort of relinquish his his French citizenship. Mm-hmm. So when she was born, she was just automatically French. And I had to email the embassy, the consulate a couple of times and be like, so how do I make sure that my daughter's French? And they're like, she just is because her dad's French. Wow. And even if he lives in the US.
It's the droit de sang, the blood right?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So so she was just born French and it didn't matter that he had his American citizenship. So that was super, super exciting.
Very nice. So even though she was not born on French soil, just having the blood makes her French.
Exactly. Exactly. Cool. And I was so jealous because I was like, wait a minute, I've been married to a French guy for at that point, it was 8 years.
Yep. And you lived in France. You speak French.
Yeah. And so I definitely was jealous that they both had dual citizenship and not just jealous, but if you've ever, I know you have, if you've ever traveled internationally with somebody that has a different citizenship, it's scary, it's stressful.
They separate you.
Yeah.
Because we're not European. The Europeans go one way, others go another way, and then you get separated. Yeah,
exactly.
we've had issues with that as well, where they held one person up longer because they're looking through something, and
exactly,
it's super stressful. So yeah, having the same, you can just both whip out the French passport when needed or the American passport when needed.
Exactly. So we're going to go travel to France this August, and this is going to be the first time that my husband and I have traveled with the same citizenships, and I'm so thrilled.
First time with the baby, or no?
Yes. So we've traveled with her nationally, like, domestically, but we haven't taken her to France yet. So that's going to be wild.
I'm so jealous. Although traveling with a toddler, not so jealous.
Nope.
All right. So tell us a little bit more. How did you meet Geoffroy? This is when I also met you. So bring us back down memory lane.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I met Geoffroy. I believe it was the first day that I got to France. So yeah. So I arrived in France. I arrived in Paris, and the journey from Paris to Le Mans, which is where you and I lived, Heather, that's for a different story. I got lost and really wild. It was so wild. But I arrived in the dorms, and I started getting myself set up, and it was my birthday. I was 22 years old. And I was like, okay, if I don't put myself out here, because this was not my first time just living internationally. This was my first time living outside of my parents' home. And it was like a huge step. And I was like, okay, if I don't immediately make friends right now, this is not going to work out. I was like, I can see myself just living in this really, really teeny dorm room. Oh God, how teeny they were.
Yeah, you could touch everything in the bathroom, on the toilet. You could take a shower, sit on the toilet, use the
brush your teeth.
You could do everything in like this tiny, I don't even know how many square feet it was.
It was probably like 3. It was probably 3. Yeah. So I was like, if I don't immediately make friends right now, I am not going to make it through. And so I propped open my door, and I sat a chair out in front of my door.
You did it.
And yes, I did. And outside of the door, there was this big stairwell. I know that you'll remember this, right? And so I sat there on the chair, and as people walked up and down, I was just like, bonjour, with my very American accent. And I was like, let's just do this. And people were intrigued. They were like, this is weird. This is very weird. What's going on? And I made some friends. I did immediately. They were like, okay, what's going on? And immediately I could not speak French. So I'll have to tell you, when you ask about my journey learning French, you'll realize at what point I was really desperate right here. So the minute that I spoke to them, they were like, ooh, something's wrong here. She doesn't speak French. And
where's that accent from?
Yeah. And so, I got across to them that it was my birthday. And so they were like kind of singing happy birthday to me. Oh. And then down the stairs comes this very, very handsome French guy. So he walks down the stairs. He sees this big catastrophe of a birthday song happening, and he stops and, curious, and he spoke English.
Thank God.
Thank God. Because nobody else there spoke English.
Or not very well, probably.
No, it turns out, he didn't live in the dorms. He was coming to visit his 2 friends who did live in the dorms at that time. And he just happened to be visiting them on my first day in France. And so he comes
on your birthday.
On my birthday.
While you're getting sung Bon Anniversaire.
Exactly. And he's like, hello. And he's got this, I'm not good at
adorable British accent.
Yes, he's got this British accent. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just enamored. So the first time I saw him, it was like love at first sight. And so
I can vouch, he is very good looking.
Yes. And he had this long hair at the time. He was so exotic. Anyways. That's how we first met. And he asked He asked us to go to the discotheque. Do you remember going to the discotheque with him and his friends?
Yes, I believe I do. What were their names? Remind me.
Joanne and
yeah.
William.
Yep.
And those two we're still in contact with because those are his best friends.
So funny.
Yeah, we went to Joanne's wedding like a couple years ago, and they just had a baby last year, and William's got a couple kids. So we're in contact with those guys.
That's so funny.
Super funny. Yeah. So anyways, that's how I met him, but he had a girlfriend at the time. And so he we sort of kept a friendship. He split, went back to England. I finished my semester abroad, went back to the US, and then I actually went back to France a few different times. And one time when I was living in Nantes, we reconnected, and then it's all history from there, right? Nice. So
yeah.
like, oh, let's get married. Okay.
quick, let's do this. No, but I mean, it's such like a lovely story, like that I don't know, like love at first sight, and then
I know
things didn't work out, but then they eventually did, and just the destin, like how destiny, fate works out.
Yeah, I would never have imagined. I remember coming back from France when I was an exchange student the first time and being like, I've got to get back to France. Like, I don't know how, but I've got to get back there. And so I did a little stint. I was like a Department of State intern in Marseille, and that was just a really short amount of time. And then I came back to the US and I was like, no. Yeah. I still shouldn't be here. So then I did the teaching English to little kiddos. I know you did that too, right?
Same thing. Yep.
Yeah. And so I went back and I lived in Nantes that time. That's when Geoffroy and I really connected. And he was living in Le Mans still. So that was a 2-hour train ride. So I was doing train rides every single day for 2 hours. So I could live with him and be with him.
You do crazy things for love. I mean,
that's true.
Still better than, West Coast of the US.
I know. Yeah, that's true.
Still closer. So what did you what's your relationship to French? Let's start there. You said you did not, speak much arriving. We only stayed, you and I only stayed a semester. Some people do a full year. So we only got 4 or 5 months, immersion.
Yeah.
We hung out with other Americans. So
it was definitely not enough time to really get all the French that I wanted in my life. Okay. So French is definitely a second language for me. I learned a lot of my vocabulary in the context of the university. I started learning French in 7th grade. We could either choose Spanish or French. And my friends you did that too. Okay.
Same thing. Yep.
Yeah. All my friends were doing Spanish, and my older sister, who I adore and always copied, she did French. And so I was like, you know what? My sister's cool. I'm going to be cool too. And I took a French class. And
we're so opposite. Yeah. Mine was my older sister, who was a straight A, perfect child and student, did Spanish, and my mom spoke Spanish. And I was like, okay, I'm doing French. You both do Spanish. I'm going the opposite way of you both.
Yeah. See, and I was like the copier. I was like, oh yeah, definitely. I've got to be just like my older sister.
So many of my students did that though, because they're like, my older brother can help me. My older sister is going to help me. So
exactly. Yeah.
More common. Yeah. I don't know why I was just being an outlier, but
that's all right. It's good to be.
It worked out.
Independent. Yeah. So, I was definitely not serious about French at the time. But then in high school, we were required to take French. No, not French, a language again. And so I was like, well, I've already got a small underpinning of French. Let's just keep going with it. And by the time I got to college, I just took French again because I was like, this is going to be an easy A. It wasn't, because I just... Yeah, it's okay. But I wasn't really great at French in college or in high school or anything, but I started to take it a little bit more seriously because I started to get, a little bit of taste of the culture through a couple of my French teachers that were actually French. There was one French teacher, Monique, that was so inspiring because she was like so fashionable in the French way of like wearing all black outfits, pairing it with some little pop of lipstick, not being self-conscious about wearing like the same outfit twice in a week. She just did what she wanted. And so her personality was really French too. You know, she was really blunt, quite critical of things that we might take for granted in the US, like our short lunch hours, lack of long vacation benefits, just things that French people enjoy every day. She would sort of like introduce us to that and show us like, you know, she would describe these really quintessential things like walking into a boulangerie or the concept of the French apéro, like just little things that she would sort of tell us about. And I was like, oh, maybe French is kind of cool.
Yeah. She's like, hey guys, it's better elsewhere.
Exactly.
Can I share this secret with you?
Yeah.
Lunch can be 2 hours, not 25 minutes.
And you can enjoy a beer.
And actually enjoy yourself in life.
Yeah. And you're not going to be called an alcoholic. This is just like, you know,
5 weeks paid vacation. Hey.
Oh, can you imagine? Yeah. So that sort of inspired me. And at one point in college, the French club was really, really small. And our French teacher offered extra credit if we joined the club. And I needed extra credit. So I joined the club. And because it was small, I ended up being the president of the French club. And I had no idea how this happened. But yeah, it was just wild. I was like, okay, well, I can't even hardly speak it, but let's go for it. So as the president of the French club, everyone sort of just expected that I was going to go to France. And I never realized that was like a possibility for me because nobody in my family has ever learned another language. Nobody had ever lived in another country. I was going to have to pay for it myself. But I was like, oh, like this is something that maybe I should consider. And so I looked into it and I saved up some cash being a waitress and I took out a loan and I made it happen. So studying abroad was really the moment that like my language took off. So as I told you, when I arrived to France, it was a huge shock. It was not so much of like a culture shock. Yes, a culture shock, but it was a language shock because I was like, I have studied French since 7th grade. I've got this down.
I'm good. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm good. And it was this moment that I was on the train from Paris to Le Mans. And I realized I did not speak French. I really did not speak French. So when you get on the trains, right, you have to like compost your ticket or, you know, stamp it or something.
Stamp it. Yeah. I don't even know what the English.
I don't know what the English word is either. So composte. Okay. So I got on the train, and the story before how I got on the train was a wild mess. So there was actually this guy, Steve, that helped me buy my ticket to get on the train because another guy had tricked me, swindled me into buying used train tickets. Anyways, that's another story.
Oh gosh.
Got reversed because this guy, Steve, was like, he yelled at the guy and he's like, what are you doing? He bought me my ticket. He put me on my seat in the train. So I'm on the train, but I didn't compost my ticket because I didn't know I was supposed to.
Oh yeah. That's like a total foreign idea.
Yeah. I mean, I had never been on a train before, so I didn't know anything about it. So the train guy, what do you call him? The controller,
the conductor,
the ticket master.
Oh, the ticket checker.
Ticket checker guy.
I don't know.
So the ticket checker guy, he's coming down the train and the train's already taken off. We're already gone. The doors are closed. And so he comes by and he's checking everybody's tickets. And I was like, I got my ticket. I'm good. And I show him my ticket and he starts yelling at me. And that was when I was like, okay, definitely don't understand him. And then I tried to spit out like a word or two in French, like as a response. And it was just like one of those nightmares where you're like, can't speak.
Oh, no.
And I was so shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say. Because I'd practiced these things like Je m'appelle Misty, où est la bibliothèque?
J'ai mon billet de train.
Yeah.
But that wasn't enough.
That is not what he wanted to hear. And so he's sitting there yelling at me. I'm like, oh, mortified, red-faced, just like, I have no idea what's going on. And that's when I realized I don't speak French. I'm really in trouble. So, you know, I did have experience reading French. I did have experience writing French. I had the grammatical underpinning sort of in my mind, but the speaking and the listening was just not there. It was just not there. So my education severely underprepared me for my time in France.
Mm-hmm.
But I met a lot of people. Oh my gosh, Heather, I don't think you know how much you helped me because your French is superb. Yes. Oh my gosh. So, I relied on friends for a lot of translation until I could get to the point where I could, survive in French. So that was really like my immersion experience. It was definitely a struggle. And I remember I was like doing these really crazy techniques. I was like, I've just got to learn French. I have to. So one thing I did every night is I turned on my little radio. Somebody left a little radio in my dorm when I moved in. And so I turned on the radio to like a French talk show. And I don't know if I thought that by osmosis or something, I was just going to soak in the language.
Mm-hmm.
But every night before bed, I turned that on and I actually slept with it on. I slept with the radio, the French talk show on every night. And obviously that's not how second language learning works, but it couldn't have hurt.
It didn't hurt. No, you at least got the rhythms and the sounds.
Yeah. And I would say about 2 months in, I was laying there at night with my little radio on, and I realized for a second, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm following this conversation, not extremely well, but I was like, oh, I'm following what they're saying. I think I know what the topic is of this chat show or whatever it was.
Yeah, you got the gist.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's when I started realizing like, okay, I am learning, because there's no benchmarks really to show you like when you're in an immersion situation that you're really, really learning. Sometimes you're like, okay, I learned a new word, or I know how to say a new phrase, but there's nothing to really show you like, okay, now you're fluent, now you're not, because obviously it's like, this sliding sort of
continuum that we never feel like we're ever done.
So. Yeah. So that was really cool. My time in living in France, that was really when I learned French. And other things definitely helped. So my time learning French did not stop there. Obviously, once I got a French boyfriend, which is my husband, I think there was always this joke of like there were the walking dictionary or something like this. Mm-hmm. Like, immediately your level of French will increase because you always have a teacher there. Mm-hmm. So that was amazing. And so living with him now, I continue to increase, my ability to speak French every day, because he doesn't mind correcting me.
As most French people do not.
Exactly.
They're very good about like, you said that wrong. Nope, this should be this.
Exactly.
Your accent was off here. Like,
yeah. Oh my gosh, my father-in-law, so my husband's dad, he told me, and I think he was being sweet or something, but we were like just sort of talking about accents one time, and he was like, well, yeah. And I mean, your French R will never be correct because you're American. And I was like, oh my gosh,
never.
I'll work on it. I didn't say that, but he was definitely sure. And I don't know how my French R is now. I'm going to go back and see him after not seeing him for 2 years. So I'm really going to try.
Yeah.
But
gargle lots of stuff before you guys leave practice.
Yeah. See if I can get like a little phlegmy throat or something. Yeah. So that's my journey learning French, and I am so not done.
Of course, we're never done. But tell us more. How is it between you and Geoffroy? Like, do you guys use more English, more French? How has that evolved? Because obviously at the beginning, he was there helping you with his English. He speaks English very well. Obviously, he's also improved his English, I'm sure, since I last saw him.
Definitely. So, okay, when we first met, I mean, it was a lot of English because I just didn't speak French at all when I first met him. But, he was only here for a few weeks the first time I met him. So the second time that I met him, that was 2 years after my study abroad in France, when I was living in Nantes. I would say probably 50-50. We were probably doing 50% English, 50% French, because I was really, I needed to learn French better. I was working in the schools. I was also working at a biotechnology company as an English coach. And so I really wanted to have like a professional level of French. And so I was pushing like, okay, let's really speak French when we can. But on his side, he was like, same, I really need to learn English. You know, we got engaged after like 3 months of dating, which to me sounded like absolute, just a terrible way to set things up. Like, you should have a really strong foundation. You should know somebody for like 5 years before you get married. I'd always told people this.
Yes. Yeah. Why do we have these ideas though, that like time equals better relationship?
I don't know.
I think about this often. And you could say the same with language. Like, just because I've studied, let's say, Spanish for like 15 years and I've only studied Italian for a year, like I'm putting a lot more effort into Italian, and like maybe it's going to get better than my Spanish. It's not about time per se. Right. It's about a lot of other factors. So
absolutely. Oh my gosh. And I couldn't have been more wrong at the time. Like at the time I was just so smitten that I wasn't even thinking about how this contradicted my personal philosophy about relationships.
Right. But then other people tell you, oh, it's just young love. Oh, you guys are naive. You guys are wrong. It's not going to work out. You're from different cultures. There's so many reasons that you don't live in the same country.
Exactly. Yeah. And we got so much of that pushback. So, you know, when we got engaged 3 months into my stint in Nantes, and so I had met his parents maybe 2 months previous. And when we got engaged, I remember his parents, we got engaged at their beach house in Normandy. And it was really beautiful. It was like in the sunset. And we came home, Geoffroy and I came home to his parents' house, and he was like, we got engaged. And I remember the look in his parents' eyes was like shock and worry, and not the excitement that I expected when, you know, I first got engaged for the first time in my life. You know,
you guys are all giddy, and and hopefully the only time in your life.
Right. Yeah. And his parents were sort of like immediately asking questions like, how are you going to make this work? Where are you going to live? What do you guys, you know, this is not even possible really. And they didn't say this is not possible, but they were trying to be sweet. They were trying to appreciate the moment, but definitely they were like, this is a bad idea.
Oh my gosh, that's the worst.
So that was really tough. So, hey, we're hitting 10 years this July 14, Bastille Day. It's not done on accident.
Yeah.
So we're hitting 10 years. So, I mean, it worked out. But anyways, we're talking about language. So let me get back to it. So we started out 50-50 when we were living together in France. But then eventually we moved to the US, and that took some effort. We had to get him a visa and everything so that he could come over and we could get married in the US officially. It was a mess. It's not like on TV. Yeah. Unless you watch like 90 Day Fiance, maybe. I've never seen this, but somebody
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. They were like, your story kind of sounds like 90 Day Fiance. Did he have to wait in France to get his visa so that you guys could get married? And I was like, yeah. So anyways, he moves to the US and he started college here immediately in the US. And so then we really switched gears because he needed to improve his English ASAP. So then I'd say we were probably, and we moved in with roommates to save money. So we were probably 70, 80% English, and the other 10, 20, 30% French. That was only to talk when we didn't want people to hear what we were saying. You know, it was just like this code language at that time. Mm-hmm. So probably for like 3-4 years, we really primarily existed through, English. Then let's see, something else changed our dynamic. We got to live in Peru for a summer for my master's research. And so we started learning Spanish.
Cool.
And so that sort of changed our dynamic a little bit because French and Spanish are a little more similar than like Spanish and English. And so it sort of helped us speak a little bit more French. Mm-hmm. We were learning Spanish just because it was just easier to move back and forth. And then I would say after we had our child, after we had Maeve, so 2.5 years ago, we really tried to kick up the French. And so it moved back from being primarily English to a little bit more French than previously, but still I'd say like we're about 60% French, 50% English. But I have limited capacity in storytelling or explaining things that are in a different context than how I learned French. So when I'm talking about changing a baby's diaper, or, their binky, no one ever taught me these words, this vocabulary when I was learning French or, when I was living in France. And so I really have to switch back to English when I'm talking about certain things. So,
and even if you learn the vocab, you don't know, there's just so much like the way you say things, the things that go together, the songs that are sung, like it's more than just like replacing the word binky with whatever the word is. I don't even know because I don't know those words in French either. But it's there's so much more culture of like how to raise a child, what things you say to a child, what songs you sing at what moment, how you play like peekaboo, like ah cuckoo, like there's like, it's not always just like translatable. Like there might be a different game that they play, for example.
Exactly. So. Yeah. I was thinking like, okay, so I call my daughter like sweetie, sweetheart. There's these little terms of endearment, for example, that you use. And I would ask my husband, like, how do you say this? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, there's not really that term. And then I hear, we Skype his parents all the time. And so then I hear my mother-in-law interacting with my daughter. And it's like, she's using these cute little words like choupinet. What is choupinet? Like shoe, like kind of like, I guess
so cute.
Yeah. And then like the pinette on the end of it
just makes it cuter.
How would I know to ever say these kind of things? And so
you need to watch other French moms parenting like that. Exactly. That for me was critical that we had. So I mostly spoke Polish with my kids. I had friends. I had like 3 really good friends that all had kids, and I would just like watch them like hawks. Like I was like listening to everything that they said, picking up, trying to use the same expression. Like what verb did she just use to say that thing that like I never know how to say that. Like I was like creepy spying on my friends all the time because I was like, we need to hang out so I can just like absorb how you parent, because it is it's not something you can necessarily look up, and there's not like parents on YouTube like here's how I parent in French. Like you can't really like you can't really find that. You have to either know someone and watch them. That this is like such cultural stuff that you're brought up with. We watched other, our own mother with us, our friends' moms, we had so much exposure to that growing up that we don't think about it. It's things that are so automatic.
Totally. Like, yeah, I remember my mom singing me like these songs when I was little to put me to sleep. And so just like in my heart, I want to sing those same songs.
Of course.
And I can learn French nursery rhymes and I can sing them to my daughter, but like, is it really, is my heart
heartfelt?
I don't know. I do sincerely want her to learn French with all of my heart. And so I definitely try, but I'm not going to think of it at the moment. I'm going to think of like, how can I comfort my daughter the best way I know? And it's always going to be my first language. So that's really tough. And I've also asked my husband, like, can you teach me nursery rhymes? And he's like, I don't know any nursery rhymes.
Oh, yeah.
But he does, because the other day it was raining and we were walking outside and I was like singing this little, like, it's raining, it's pouring. Yeah.
The old man is snoring.
Exactly. And I was like, Geoffroy, do you have any songs like that in French? And he's like, boom. He comes up with one. He's like, oh, what was the song? He's like, something about a grenouille. He's like, il pleut,
il mouille, c'est le temps de la grenouille. Ouais.
Voilà.
Yeah. I like that one.
Yeah. And so I was like, he does know these. He's got these in his head, but I've got to elicit it somehow. And, I'm trying to learn these nursery rhymes. I'm trying to sing songs with her and stuff, but it's such a struggle because.
Well, can we just talk about how parenting is a struggle? Like in your first language, parenting is not easy.
Gosh.
And like,
oh my gosh.
Also you were saying like, you're trying to comfort, like there's these moments that are difficult in and of themselves. Your child is screaming at you or crying or having a fit. You're not thinking like, how do I say tantrum in French? Like you're not thinking grammar and vocab. You're thinking like, my child's having a fit, I need to do something.
Stop the issue.
Stop the problem.
Yes.
Yeah, like we need to nip this in the butt. So like language, it gets thrown out the window, like, which makes this whole multilingual, bilingual parenting like so much more challenging, because you've got multiple layers added on here of like, parenting is challenging. Parenting in a pandemic is challenging.
Is it ever? Yeah. I mean, okay. So it's 7:30 in the morning. You're late to take your kid to school, and you have to explain to her why she can't wear her Princess Belle Halloween dress. Are you going to try and do this in French? Or are you going to do this in English because, you know, it's really fast. She's going to understand it. She's going to listen.
And you need to get out the door.
Yeah. You're going to do it in English. Unless you're amazing. And anybody out there that's doing this, like, oh my gosh, kudos to you. I'm trying, but
we're bowing down to those of you who
totally
are 100% in your second language.
Totally.
It's tricky.
So one of the problems is that I make a lot of grammatical errors when I speak in French. And so when I say a lot, it's probably not like tons, but for me, I'm very self-conscious about it. So like gender, right? So French nouns are either masculine or feminine. And so anytime you speak, you're quickly needing to assess, is this masculine or is this feminine? Is a fork masculine? Is it feminine? How about a cup? How about a fridge, a chair? And so I just make it up as I go. I just like go with my intuition, and my intuition is not very great in terms of deciding what is feminine and what is masculine. So like my daughter will ask like, comment on dit banana en français? And I'll just sort of like spit out like whatever gender I think it is, because I don't know. And I just want to like, you know, seem like it's natural to her. I don't want her to see me sort of like trying to figure out like, I don't know how to say if it's le or la. And so I'll just go ahead and like throw it out there.
Or just say banane without saying it.
Right.
And then Geoffroy can put the une or the
Well, he's definitely always there to be like la
banane.
I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. And I do sincerely appreciate that. But I feel so self-conscious because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm teaching my daughter incorrect French. Now, I've studied second language acquisition in my master's, and I know that kids will correct it.
Oh yeah.
It's okay to teach them incorrect French. And so I know that it's okay, but I still feel really bad when I am giving her something that's incorrect. So that's definitely a struggle. But another struggle, just remembering to speak French to your child. Like just remembering in general that exists in your life, that you have that as a goal. It's so tough. So my husband and I, first we were like, okay, every dinner, because at dinner, we'll take a moment, we'll sit down all at the table and we'll talk with each other, and it's face to face. And so we were like, this is a really good time to have some solid French interaction. So like every dinner, we're just going to speak in French. And, you know, we can try to make that happen, but dinner is a time where we're having lots of discussions. And sometimes I'll be explaining something like that happened at work. And maybe I'm like, oh, so-and-so said this. And my husband will be like, yeah, but how did she say it in English? Because that really matters, you know, the way that does something in a certain language. And so then I'll translate real quick, and then I'll switch into English and never switch back to French. And we won't realize, you know, it's really fluid where we can switch from one language to another. And you don't realize, oh, I've just switched to English for the last 3 hours. Yeah. And so we would do that all the time. And we wouldn't end up really speaking French during dinner because we were having so many communications about what happened in our world in English today. And so that's tough. But the last time I talked to you, Heather, you were giving some suggestions too, like, you know, maybe just have a couple days of the week where you just the whole day. And actually that's been really successful since the last time we've talked.
Great.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So since the last time we talked, we've had Saturdays, Sundays, and Wednesdays. Saturdays and Sundays because it's not a rush. We don't have to hurry. And, you know, we can take a lot of time to really focus on French. We can call my in-laws and really focus on it. And then Wednesdays just because it's the middle of the week.
Yeah.
So
there's not this huge gap in between, you know, the whole week is English. It's like, that would be a long time without French.
Totally. Yeah. And now that we're going to France in August, there's some real pressure
motivation. Yeah. You have a reason.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. And because she's 2.5. I know that she doesn't have to have like these deep, serious conversations with any, because that just doesn't happen with a 2-year-old. But I really do want her personality, her ability to express herself. I want that to be something that is communicated to her grandparents in French. It's so important. And I also don't want them to be disappointed that, you know, we're not carrying the culture and the language as she's living in the US. You know, I want them to be like, okay, you know,
you didn't forget about us.
Yeah. Misty's not just like French nationality for bragging rights, although, okay. Yeah. But, you know, but that I truly want to be French for so many other reasons, because I love the culture, because I want to live the culture. I love the language. I want to really make sure that my daughter gets to embody those things that are so important to our family. So now the pressure's on, and we have seen some progress.
That's great.
Yeah.
So tell us, okay, so she's, I mean, the 2.5-year-old does not have this huge vocabulary. You know, we're not talking about a 12-year-old, but like, how is her comprehension? Do you feel like if you stopped speaking French from now until the trip and you took her to France, would she understand her grandparents?
Yes. And we've tested this a little bit, because
it's so interesting. Yeah. I hate to do this, but I do test my kids in certain ways too. Like as if it's like, well, I mean, we're researchers, we're interested in, you know, second language acquisition, but it's hard not to like use your kid as this guinea pig. Like, oh yeah, let's see if you understand this song, or like whatever. You're like using them as like a little test bunny, but
100%. Yep. And I'm not feeling guilty there. I'm definitely trying to untangle this. So, you know, we'll just say certain things to her in French, and then she might like do something that is sort of like what we've requested of her. And so then you can sort of wonder, like, did she understand me, or is it because I pointed at the cup, you know? So the other day though, I was like, oh, what did I say to her? Oh, I was like, on t'a acheté un nouveau maillot de bain. Like, we bought you a new swimsuit. Yeah. And so I didn't translate it to her, right? I was like, on t'a acheté un nouveau maillot de bain. And she was talking to her grandma, and she was like, And I was like, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire maillot de bain? Right? What does that mean, maillot de bain? And she was like, swimsuit. And I was like, okay. She not only understood like how to translate maillot de bain to swimsuit, but she understood when I asked her, what does this mean? Right. And so I'll do little things like, I'll ask her something like without using
gestures, pointing.
Yeah. I'll try not to use my nonverbal skills, my nonverbals, to communicate with her, to see like, okay, like, can you go and grab that cup for me real quick? And sometimes she'll go and grab the wrong thing, or sometimes she just plain won't understand. But most of the time she knows what we're saying. And more, it's getting a little scary, because sometimes we'd use French as like, you know, a code language, like, hey, hide the cookies from her. I don't want her to eat any more cookies before dinner. Yep. And I did that the other day, and she's like, no, I want the cookies. And I was like, oh shoot. Oh, right. Yes. So now she's, without even testing her, she's showing us, okay, she's really understanding.
This happened to us the other day, but with my son and spelling. So my mom and I, you know, he's almost 5. So we would always spell things in English, like same thing, like, you know, spell the word cookie, like COOKIES, like I put those away. And my son was like, where'd you put the cookies? And I was like, wait, how did you understand? Or like, you know, like we spelt like different words that he's understood. And I'm like, oh man, like now we can't do the spelling secret code anymore. Yeah, it's funny when they suddenly, it's so shocking. Like the first couple times that they show you that they've understood when you thought it was hidden.
Right. And when they're making progress on things that you didn't think you were working on them with, you're like, oh, that was not my goal to teach you this. But they learned it anyway.
That's great.
Yeah, it's rewarding, but it's also scary, because it's like, oh, well, now how do I hide the cookies from her? I'm going to have to start speaking in Spanish about
galletas.
There we go. So, yeah. So, you know, my goal for her right now is to have her willingly and naturally speak in French without being prompted.
Yeah.
That's something that she's not doing.
Right. So you're not worried about her understanding when she's there. You're just worried more like, because so many bilingual kids will do that where they always default to one stronger language. So you really want her to take initiative.
Yeah. And like, so her grandma will ask her something. She'll say like, oh, t'as une jolie robe. Like, I love your pretty dress. And then my daughter will like, sort of like, she'll show her dress. She knows what she's saying. And then she'll say like, it's pink. I love it. It has flowers. And she'll just keep speaking in English. And we're like, Mammy speaks in French. Can you speak French to her? And she just sort of doesn't. Yeah. And so I'd love for her to respond in French. I'd love for her to, ask things in French.
What do your in-laws do at that point? Do they feign well, first of all, do they speak English?
No.
Okay. So it's really, that's not a false statement. They really don't speak English. So they should, maybe rather than you guys saying it, have the grandparents be like, huh? J'ai pas compris. T'as dit quoi?
Right.
Like, what? I didn't understand that. What'd you say? And then, like, because that'll take it off you, because you guys are always going to be the ones nagging, pushing French on her. So, if it's really, truly, they don't understand, like that is going to come up. And especially while you guys are in France, there's going to be plenty of people she meets that aren't going to understand. And, as long as it's authentic, like, huh? Comment? Like, like, what? I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
You can do that. But like, if you and Geoffroy did that, she knows you speak English. Like, you can't fake that. Like, you cannot pull one over even on a 2-year-old.
Right.
But if your in-laws really don't, like, they should like let them say like
I think that's
interact
a great
with
idea.
her. Interact and be like, tu as dit quoi? Explique à mamie, j'ai pas compris. Like, have them take the initiative to kind of pull it out of her, because I'm sure it's in there. It's just not as easy to pull. It's not as easy for her to get those words out. So she's just going the easiest route, because that's what we all do. 2-year-olds to 22 to 92. We're all going to take the easiest route. So
totally. Yeah.
And I think even that, I don't know how long you're staying in France, but I bet you're going to see a huge improvement after, because she's going to have so many interactions where she's going to realize, oh man, nobody here speaks English. So she'll eventually like catch on that, this is a really important language. Like, I'm going to start using French more. And she's only 2.5, so people aren't going to expect a lot. So I think even with like a few things that she says, if people are very positive, I might also talk to your in-laws, because the French are so like well known that they're going to correct, they're going to overcorrect and want everything to be perfect. And, that's how they are. I would tell them like, you guys know her French, she might make a couple mistakes, maybe just let it slide. Don't say anything, because we're trying to encourage and not discourage. And we don't, like, I would definitely like forewarn, because if they're going to just do their like typical French, like, oh, c'est pas le banane, c'est la banane. And then like, she's going to be like, oh, I don't want to speak
all
French.
Self-conscious.
Yeah. So you don't want to instill like a fear of French. So have them be super encouraging. Oui, la banane. There's ways of correcting without it being so obvious. You don't have to say no. They can say oui, la banane. Une banane. C'est quelle couleur la banane? There's ways that they could like repeat the word la banane like 6 times for her to get it without saying non, c'est pas le banane, c'est la banane.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah. And I do think that experiencing people that don't speak English, that's really going to like sort of change the paradigm for her, like her conceptualization of language, because she's not run into anybody that doesn't speak English yet.
Yeah. So and you guys are bilingual, so she knows she can get away with a lot with you guys.
Yeah, no, those are really good suggestions. We're definitely going to implement them. And I do think that we should have a discussion with his parents before we get there about like, okay, let's really don't try and translate things, even if you do know the word in English, because people are excited to show that they know some English words. So even though they don't maybe speak English, they've got some vocab. And we'll definitely have to say like, okay, let's not translate.
This is for her to get like maximum 100% French. My in-laws obviously speak English because they live here, but they would confuse, and actually my parents as well would confuse my kids at times. So kids, they keep things pretty like in their head. It's like, okay, this person speaks these two. My parents speak 2 languages. This grandparent speaks English. This grandparent speaks French.
Right.
My dad would come in and he would say it to them in Polish. Hey, jak się masz? And the kids would be like, what? why is my English speaking grandpa saying, how are you in Polish? And then my Polish, and the in-laws that speak Polish, they'll use English and be like, how are you? Like, oh, like, did you fall? And I'm like, no, don't speak English. Like, we're in America, speak Polish to them. So like, and you could see the kids, like when it first would happen, they would just kind of stop and
like, what's
look.
going on?
Like, wait, that's not the right language. Because 99% of the time this person speaks Polish with them, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But then this one easy phrase, they would use English. And I'm like, you're confusing them.
Yeah. Because they put them in this box. Like, okay, you're Polish speaking, you're English speaking,
and if you're a full bilingual, then they can use either. But like, if you're just going to throw like a one sentence out, like, c'est la vie, but like you don't speak any French, like that's going to confuse the kid, because they're going to be like, wait, do you speak French? Can I now use French with you? Or like, was that a one-off, So yeah, I saw that happen often with my kids. And, my dad was trying to be like, look, I know this one sentence in Polish, and same with the in-laws. Like,
you see a little kid that's like, asking for something and you don't know what they want. Of course, you're going to try and help in any way you can. So I can see this happening, naturally. They're going to try and translate. Naturally, they're going to try and use an English word or two.
And that's also with adults. We do that, and adults feel so happy. Like, oh, thank you for making the effort for me. But like a kid is just like taken aback, and they're like, huh?
Wait a minute. Yeah.
My worldview is confused now. So
I'm really excited. I do think, like you said, that time that we spend there, when she comes home, hopefully her perspective on French is really different. And she does see it as like important, it's amazing.
And you know what? You should like take pictures of like all the family members and like make a little book, because you could be like, remember, this person speaks French, this uncle, this aunt, all of these people, like, it's not just this language that like we sometimes speak here, but like you have people in your life you need to speak it with. Like, remember, like your, tonton, whatever his name is, like your uncle doesn't speak any English. So, like, there's like a real like reason. You can like make a little book of all like the French family, and just like making it real, because when you're growing up here and you're surrounded by English, and like mom is like, well, no, say it in French, and you're like, why do I need French right now?
Yeah, why does she keep pushing this? Yeah, that's right. I really like the idea of tying it to important people in her life, and she's got like
she'll love, like, if it's like a picture of her with them, like all the memories, because she's she's little, she's not going to remember, but later on, my kids are obsessed with videos and pictures of them. So like, if you have like a little picture of her with the person, and like, remember going and you went to their garden, or like whatever, like small thing that she might remember. They had a pool, they had a dog. Those things, it's amazing.
Idea.
They say kids don't have memories, but like my daughter, they're under 5, but they like will tell me things, and they'll say, remember yesterday when we lived in Canada? And I was like, yeah, that was like months ago, but like, yeah, okay. Yes. And like, remember our old house that we were in yesterday? And I'm like, that was a year ago, but yeah. So like their concept of time is not there, but they have the memory.
They have the yeah. She pulled that the other day. She said something like, I can't remember. Oh, we went to Denver and we went to a zoo there. Mm-hmm. She said the same thing. She was like, yesterday when we went to
the Denver Zoo.
Calls it like Colorado instead of Colorado. She's working on it. It's so cute. She's cute. Colorado. And we saw the animals at the zoo, and we were like, gosh, that was like 4 months ago. Mm-hmm. So I definitely see she's got that strong memory. I know she'll remember France, because it's going to be impactful and
you'll have pictures and other things to prove. And
yeah. I'm so excited to bring her there. So
take lots of video, take everything off your phone, so you have plenty of space.
Right? I don't have to like purchase some space, so I can just film every moment.
Especially all those cute things, like you were saying, like how she says Colorado, and then my son would say, instead of ketchup, he said chepup, and like those have like stuck with us because like they're just so cute. And like, remember when you were little and you said chepup instead of ketchup? Yeah. And like,
oh my god,
it's just so cute. So yeah, there are joys to bilingual parenting, or just parenting in general. What were your thoughts? I know you said you're self-proclaimed like small town girl, the western part of the US, and like France was like that first big eye-opening trip. Like, did you ever consider, like, you were first with Geoffroy, I know things moved quickly into marriage, but like what were you thinking of, like, people who have bilingual kids, bilingual parenting? Did you ever think Did you see yourself like raising a bilingual child?
Never in my life. I wanted to. I hoped that that would be something that I could do in my life, but like I never thought I would be bilingual.
Mm.
It just isn't something that my family was into, and so I just never thought that this was something that I was going to do. But when I was in college and I started learning, I was studying anthropology and I was learning about second language acquisition and, just linguistics in general. I was like, oh my gosh, language is so important. I've got to learn a second language. And so the moment that I really was feeling fluent in French, I knew that if I had a child, I had to teach them French 100%. But I definitely didn't know how I would do it, because if you're married to somebody that also just only speaks English, that's going to be really tough, right? And so, I mean, like, I think you are this French speaking parent, right?
Well, not really. So we mostly did Polish at home.
Right.
I did not do French. I tried like really early on, and I came up against that same wall that you mentioned, how we could do all of academic French. I got a master's in French, did all sorts of things in French, but I don't know the basic words like bib,
right,
bottle,
diaper,
and
yeah.
Of course, we talked about this already, how you could look those things up, but they're not like culturally instilled.
Right.
And it was super weird to me that I had this super high level of French and I didn't feel comfortable speaking it to my child. And I had an intermediate level of Polish, like a B1 at best.
Right.
But I had been exposed since I knew, since I had first met my husband. He had a 5-year-old brother. Then his sister had a 1-month-old baby. And there were always children around. Like it's like a big Polish Catholic family. So there was always children. His friends are a little bit older, had kids first.
Right.
And I knew like Polish, like the way you talk to a baby, like it didn't feel comfortable like English, but it was like, I think I can do this. Like I'm a little closer.
Right.
And we decided to just do minority language at home. And that was super weird to me because my Polish was not good. And I had all those same qualms that it was like, I'm going to teach them bad grammar. There's 7 cases and I mess them up all the time. Or I just like stumble. I'm like, how do you, what is, like I'm missing so much vocab. Like there's just so many reasons why I could have said like, not going to do it. I'm going to do it wrong. I'm going to mess it up. But then I was the stay-at-home parent. So I was like, well, I'm the one with them.
It's me or nothing.
24/7. So they're either going to get this, shoddy base in Polish or nothing. So I was like, it's probably better than nothing. And then, hopefully dad will fix everything that I've put in the wrong spot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's sort of where my mindset was before I was married, before I had met Geoffroy. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to teach her what I can. And maybe she's not going to be super fluent, but she can have like this base.
Exactly.
But, once I married Geoffroy, it was like, okay, this is going to be a piece of cake. I figured she's just going to learn it. It's just going to happen.
Just like the way she was born, a French citizen. Yeah. It should just happen.
Yeah, it just happens because he speaks it. So obviously I was very wrong about that, because I just believed that if we were speaking French around her, it was just
she would pick it up.
Yeah, that's it. But it's really not like that. She might pick up, basic understanding of it, but it really is this concerted effort. Like you actually do have to try to get your child to speak back to you in French, to get them to be interested in it. So, that after having Maeve, it was definitely something changed in me that was like, I really do have to like put some sort of different effort towards teaching her this language, because otherwise it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, my best piece of advice, like the thing that worked the best for me, because when I did start to do French with my kids, it was before going to Canada, trying to get them ready, because I was so afraid like they're going to have nothing and be lost at daycare. Right. And my son resisted. So he, at first I would speak to them in French and I would just, super like little things and just be like, est-ce que vous avez faim? And I would like explain, and, I'd translate, explain, like try and like mimic and show. And he would just say no. He would say, nie, nie, mama, nie. Like he would say, no, 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 don't speak that language. Like, what are you doing? Because he was already comfortable, Polish or English. He was good with those two, but he was like, what are you doing? And he was resistant. My daughter was too young to have like an opinion. So for a while, I just played music. And I was like,
right,
we're just gonna, you guys always want to listen to music. And it was not like me directing questions and trying to get them to speak. I just was like, let's listen to these songs. And music worked so well because it was, it puts you in a good mood, as long as it's a happy song. And even like some of the ones that are like, there's some songs in French that are like kind of sad, but then they get happy and sad. And like they go through emotions. One of the ones that my daughter loves the most is about like this bunny, Mon petit lapin, and he like il a du chagrin, and like it's like very like it's like sad, but then all of a sudden it goes saute 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 mon petit, and she loves that song because there's like this whole like sad slow, and then it goes fast fast fast, jump jump jump,
right.
So like we would listen to just lots of French songs, and first of all it's great because it takes pressure off of you. Same with Polish for me. I was like, just listen to this native person sing.
The grammar's on point.
Everything's great. You can fake sing, try and sing along, and they're getting like good input, and it lifts the mood. And my kids to this day, like I was playing with them the other day on a trampoline, and we were singing French songs because they just love them. Like there's like one about like a this like wolf in the forest is going to eat us or something. There's like lots of good ones, and my kids really, they don't speak a lot of French, but like songs are so good. So I would say like totally amp up the songs, because then you can sit back and enjoy it as well.
I rely on songs like when we're in the car and I'm trying to entertain her, I'll rely on songs to help me like keep my grammar correct. The rhyming helps me too, because if I'm like, oh, what's that word again? It's going to rhyme with this previous word, and so that definitely, that's a good
repetition. And
if we ever have her watch TV, we have her watch it in French.
We did that too. It was like 100% only minority language.
So that's something I feel like, okay, that's pretty solid. We've always got that, but you're gonna have to send me the little bunny song.
Yes, I will. I'll send you. I have tons. Okay. I actually did a program like bilingual songs in French and Spanish, so I can send you. I have a PDF with like links, so I'll send you both of those.
Oh yes, I would love that. Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Now everyone's going to be emailing me. Can I have the links here? And I will share with whoever would like it. It was like a library thing that I did, and it was fun, but like I had to look up all these songs and learn them and things because I was singing them with little kids. Very fun. And it was a good time because my kids were little, so it was like, if I'm going to do this kid research, you know me, I don't really like teaching kids. I taught little kids when I did the assistantship, like 6 to 12, and I realized that's not my age group.
I feel you.
High school and college and adults. But it was like, this is the stage of life I'm in right now. I have toddlers, so let's just like gung-ho teach more toddlers.
Might as well apply it.
It was like, things fell into place. Someone asked me to do this job, like, okay, I don't really want to, but I will. And it's all good. It got my repertoire of French and Spanish music, so now I just got to figure out all the Italian songs for myself, and then
oh my gosh
it's never ending, right?
I know.
Any tips for other non-native parents like us or future people who want to be, like you were saying, you never thought in a million years you'd have a bilingual kid, and then when you were learning French and became fluent, you did want to. So any tips for people like us who kind of aren't so sure about ourselves but want to do it anyway?
I would say, okay, like first thing, start immediately, like start at birth if you can, and you can start anytime. Okay, like obviously I started really learning French when I was like 22, I believe in my heart. So you can start anytime, obviously, but if you have the opportunity, don't wait until your kid is starting to speak English or speak at all. Like start speaking with them immediately, because that will get you more comfortable with speaking with them. That will get their ear ready for sounds and things like that. So like definitely, my method of waiting, I sort of was waiting until she was like speaking to start speaking in French. I don't think that was the best method. So don't make my mistake again.
Yeah, research has proven you're not gonna destroy their English by having them listen to another language person. There's no negative effect on, parents sometimes want to wait because they're afraid of what's going to happen to the first language. There's no negative effect. It's okay.
Yeah, I've heard people all the time, and they're like, well, I don't want to speak, Spanish with my kids because I don't want them to have delayed English learning.
It's a myth.
It's totally a myth. And it's like, I always try to explain to them, like, no, this is, the kids are going to sort this out. This is good for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's metalinguistically good for them to be conscious of language. Yeah. They'll figure it out.
Yeah. So, we have to sort of let go of those worries. Something else that I would give as a tip is, adapt your flashcards. Something that we were doing just a couple of weeks ago is I have these little flashcards to learn the alphabet. Mm-hmm. And she can't read yet, so she's just looking at the pictures. I've got 100 pictures that I can just say, what is this in French? What is this in French? And so I sort of like, I don't have to buy cards that are in French. I don't have to buy cards in a certain language, as long as you've got like little pictures. Mm-hmm. Now they're my little French vocabulary cards. So that was I was.
And if you need it, you could write the French. If you're gonna forget the word for aardvark, because obviously we would, you can write the word in French above the English word aardvark. Things like that. I would do that as well. We have certain games. We would just, it didn't matter because they couldn't read that it said dog. We would just play, and I would say chien, and then And same with books. If you feel confident translating on the spot, and you don't need to translate word for word. Just translate the gist. Just say something. Look, there's a dog in a house. Make it super simple.
That's what I was doing. Okay, so we have some books in French that Chauffeur's parents sent over. We've been having a really hard time actually getting books in French that are not French Canadian, because it's a different dialect, and we don't speak that dialect, and we don't want to teach the dialect that we're familiar with. So it's been really hard for us to get books in French, actually. So we had the grandparents send over some books, and some of them are really high level, maybe they're for 5-6-year-olds. And so not only is that maybe problematic for my daughter, but it's problematic for me reading, because sometimes it's not natural. And so I sort of adapted these. I was like, we're going to read these books. They've got pictures in them. So I'll open the book up. I'll tell my own story in French about what's happening. Nice. Right. Go through there. And so that sort of is a way that I'm like adapting materials to fit my level and to fit my daughter's sort of range. Yeah. So books definitely in the target language.
Use what you have. Yeah. Like we don't need to get new things, more stuff. We can use what we have.
Right. Totally. Yep.
All right. One last thing. Could you teach us a word or phrase or an idiom or just something, maybe something you say to Maeve often in French? Can you teach it to us?
Yes. Okay. So, it's quand la petite va, tout va. So like when the literal translation, like when the appetite goes, everything goes, or like, when your appetite is good, everything is good. Right. So it's actually from a song from Asterix et Obelix. It's like this French comic book series. I think maybe it's cartoon too. Mm-hmm. I never really got into it, but my husband taught me this phrase, and we really actually use it like in our family to gauge our family's health. So, like if our daughter's sick, but she's still eating well, we're like, okay, well, quand la petite va, tout va. Like she's not so sick that she's not eating. So she sort of feel all right. Or, if somebody has like a bad day, or we're not feeling well emotionally or something, maybe you don't feel well enough to eat. And we can apply that phrase and be like, okay, well, now you're eating. So things start to maybe
it's getting better.
Yeah. And so everybody knows that the French language, French culture is really surrounded around food and eating. And so I really love this phrase because it's this big cultural aspect that is brought into our household so often. It's like about eating, like if we're eating well, we're doing well. So I really, really
that is so culturally relevant for sure.
Yeah. I really, really love that phrase.
And there's I think it's Korean when I was learning it. One way to ask how are you is like, have you eaten? And like it's a very cultural thing, because like if someone asks you that in English, it doesn't necessarily just mean like, how are you? Like we would be like, well, yeah, I had a bagel, like, like we'd answer like literally. So it is very culturally relevant, like the way that a language talks about these sort of things. So I love that. And I didn't actually know that phrase, quand la petite va, tout va. It makes sense. It totally makes sense. So I like it.
Yeah, me too. And I guess, if you the Korean phrase is really interesting to me too, because like if you can't recollect like the last time you've eaten with somebody, it's like, oh, you've had a busy day. Maybe you need to take some time. That's really cool. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. So,
it's kind of like the mom like checking in on you, like, did you eat today?
Right. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So there's so many other phrases and things in French that I definitely could talk about. Like every night when we tuck my daughter in for bed, my husband will have the same phrase every time that he says to my daughter. He says, bonne nuit, good night, je t'aime. And then she'll repeat after him. So he says, bonne nuit. She says in her cute little voice, bonne nuit. He says, je t'aime. She says, je t'aime. And then he says, fais des beaux rêves, like have sweet dreams. Mm-hmm. She says, fais des beaux rêves. And she only started to say the last part, like maybe a few weeks ago. And so, we're sort of seeing this progression even in these little nighttime rituals and things like that. So that's sort of the sweet combination of words that I think I'll always remember, is just like this bonne nuit, je t'aime, fais des beaux rêves. So and nice. I hope that he says that to her for the rest of her life.
Oh, that's so sweet. All right. Well, everyone get your tissue out.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's so sweet. Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, of course, talking to you.
My pleasure.
And learning about, your little family and how you've incorporated French. And I think your story is just so inspiring because, like you said, you arrived in France and you were like, you realized you don't speak French the way you thought, like we think we have this high level, and then kind of reality slaps us in the face sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But look at, like, now you're a French citizen, dual citizen, raising a little bilingual. So
yes, we made it. Something accomplished here. Yeah.
The fight's not over. So a couple more years, lots of parenting for the rest of our life. But
that part.
Oh yeah, that. Well, but yeah,
we'll get there.
It was a pleasure. And if you ever want to come back on, you're always la bienvenue.
Merci. I would love to anytime for any topic. You just let me know.
All right. You'll update us on the trip and, as Maeve progresses with her languages.
Yeah. I know we'll have a lot of new news after we get back from France. So I would be so happy to talk about that.
Keep notes, keep videos. I want to hear how, fellow researcher to fellow researcher.
It's a deal.
You gotta document the whole trip. I know it is fun though. So enjoy it. Amusez-vous bien. Have a great time.
Merci.
Bon voyage.
Merci. À bientôt, j'espère.
Oui, j'espère. Bien sûr. We will be in touch. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Bye.